Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to Ride or Die, America's most dangerous and provocative vlogging series. I'm actually in my my beater car. That's our second beater car, so I don't know how the audio is going to be because this thing shakes and rattles and burrs and coughs and does all sorts of shit like old cars do. This car is like ancient by today's standards. It's like 22 years old, I think. Anyways, so today we're going to be talking about, I'm going to do a movie review from the car. We're going to be talking about Godzilla -1, written and directed by Takashi Yamazaki. That's all I know about it. It's the only credit I know about it. So I just got out of the theater, like moments ago. I wasn't even sure if I was going to do this. But I wanted to, because I wanted to do at least something about it. So if you guys don't know, while I am not the biggest Godzilla fan in the world, not the biggest kaiju fan, I like them well enough, just fine. I enjoy all the eras, from the Showa era to the Heisei era, Millennium era, legendary movies. Like, I like them for what they are, but my son, I have a son that is just like over the moon for Godzilla stuff, which is very tragic. That while he's 6 years old, just a few months into 6 years old, just a few months into first grade, and his reading is not quite reading subtitles in a movie theater good. And the reason I would have taken him to a show at like a weird time and just read him the subtitles, but we actually tried that when they re-released Godzilla against Mechagodzilla into theaters for like a day, it was for like its anniversary or something, like a year ago, and it just didn't work out. So we're gonna wait for a dub, but I had heard such good things about it, and you know, Japanese Godzilla movies aren't exactly something that's in constant production. It's kind of a special event when Toho does a Godzilla movie these days. So I wanted to check it out. I liked the last one they put out, the last Japanese one, Shin Godzilla, for many, many years. Was that come out 2015, 2016? So about since then, I've considered Shin Godzilla to be the second best Godzilla movie. The first being Godzilla 1, the original 1954 classic. That movie is actually an incredible movie. It's one of the movies that is a classic, and it's a classic for a reason. It holds up. It's deep. It's got a very powerful message, the subtext. It's a very dark movie, very heavy. And it's just a beautiful science fiction film that's kind of born out of a nation mourning, you know, after Japan had a nuke dropped on it, you know. So that's kind of what they're dealing with in kind of a psychic way. Well, I would say this: Godzilla -1 is now what I consider to be the second best Godzilla movie. Godzilla movies are weird. They're weird because they're kind of unconventional. They kind of do their own thing. Like kaiju or Godzilla movies, like they're their own genre. They don't often adhere to regular story structure and like kind of character arcs, things like that. Most of them are kind of bad, but bad in a way that's enjoyable. Especially when you go back to the Showa era and that like the mid-60s to the mid-70s era. Again, I enjoy them. I enjoy them for what they are, but they're a little wacky. This one actually is a little different. This is the most, I feel, the most mainstream Godzilla movie outside of, American Godzilla movies. It definitely has, while it still maintains its identity as a Japanese film, a Japanese product, it is very Japanese. It deals with post-World War II Japan. It's dealing with kind of a very similar thing that Godzilla 1954 is dealing with, but just in a different way. You know, you have a country that just lost a fucking war. They have to go back home and lick their wounds, but for them, the war, it's not over. It's the thing that haunts them and controls their lives, and they need permission, basically. They need to give themselves permission to move on. And the way the story goes, but it couches it in a very kind of archetypal, kind of like hero's journey, somebody looking to make good, make better, make recompense for like kind of past sins, etc. In a young character who's like this young kamikaze pilot that's pretended that his airplane was faulty, and then he lands to go get repairs on it, thinking he's only buying himself like an extra day, really. And then a Godzilla attacks and kills all of his compatriots, and he obviously takes all of that very hard. The world takes all that very hard. There's lots of people blame him kind of in a weird way for the failures of the war. They're able to kind of project that onto him. And I don't want to get too much into it because I didn't know anything about this movie. I didn't even know that this was a period film. I didn't know this took place right after World War II at all, going into it. I saw like a teaser. I saw the poster. I knew I was going to watch it at some point. I had just seen people in general say that it was really good. I like going to see weird foreign films when I get the chance to, like I said, Japanese Godzilla movies, not in theaters very often. So I went to go see it. And I think maybe that's why I was so affected with it. But I got to tell you, holy shit. Like, what a good fucking movie. It's just a good fucking movie. There's no caveats. I don't have to really think about it too much. I was just totally locked in. It's totally perfectly modulated. The script is great. The Godzilla stuff is incredible, and it is Godzilla is now back to being a metaphor, an allegory for something kind of more interesting and deeper. It's not just a big monster fight movie like Godzilla movies kind of eventually grew into. And I was good, dude. I laughed, I cried, I pumped my fist. I was completely enveloped in the film. And I think a lot of that has to do with just like how tight the script is, how tight the movie is, how well paced it is, how well structured it is. Like I said, and I do think this was intentionally made this way to kind of have a mass appeal in a way that not all kaiju movies do. Like Shin Godzilla, I like Shin Godzilla a lot, but I know that is not a Godzilla movie for everybody. That is not something I think you could show general audiences, because I think Shin Godzilla is, it's kind of like it's a meta commentary on Japanese bureaucracy, the bureaucratic failures of the Japanese government during Fukushima, and also on the Godzilla movies themselves. And they're really cool. It's a really cool movie, but not something you could just show anybody. You have to be kind of into what you're seeing. But this movie, once they do a mediocre, shitty dub, definitely you can show your grandmother this movie and she'd probably enjoy it to one degree or another. I was so pleasantly surprised by that. Pleasantly surprised just to kind of get leave it to a foreign country to kind of make the best American Western vibed Godzilla movie ever, which is kind of crazy. Just because it has a positive message for a country in mourning. It has a positive message about the strength of its people, and how everyone kind of plays a role in coming back, after a tragedy. And that's also another big thing, a part of the movie, PTSD, moving on, being kind of born into trauma, being born into tragic circumstances. Just a beautiful movie. Seriously, I cried. I had some tears running down my cheeks. At least 2 moments in this movie. 2 moments. It was just pitched so perfectly. I felt like such a sucker. I was like, God damn it, you got me. You got me, Godzilla -1. But I had such a great time. I had a great time with it. I cannot wait to watch it again. I can't wait to show my son So especially because of the Godzilla stuff. The Godzilla stuff, it looks really good. Reportedly, this cost about $15 million, which is a lot of money for a movie from Japan. You know, obviously not as much money as we spend over here, and a lot of people have brought up as a criticism, look what they did in Japan for $15 million. And while I think some of that criticism is definitely warranted, it looks like it's a $15 million. Well, okay, it's impressive for $15 million. I do not want to take that away from it, but it's not at the level of that we might see in like a $200 million movie, but not that far off. Not that far off. Some of that is just the nature of Godzilla himself, because you know they were really smart and they did something very similar in Shin Godzilla, which is Godzilla's kind of slow and lumbering and is often shot from a distance. There's always lots of debris. There's lots of smoke, you know, lots of shit flying everywhere. He's in water a lot in this movie. So that kind of obscures some of the, like, maybe the cheapness of it. It just helps, it helps obscure things and make it feel like it's part of the world. I mean, because there's tons of shit in here that if you've spent any time with any editing software, or if you've ever watched like a making of like a special effects heavy indie movie, you will recognize some of the effects that they use, some of the tricks that they're using. But that's not to take anything away from it. It's still like super impressive. They did a great job with it, and I think just like kind of bringing Godzilla back to this almost like giving him back his stoic nature goes a long way in doing that. But this Godzilla too, he's like a terrifying, he's a mean son of a bitch. He's a mean bastard. Godzilla is unambiguously, kind of just like, you know, the original film, unambiguously a destructive force of nature. The movie makes no bones about that. And it's kind of terrifying. Like the scene when Godzilla like actually comes ashore, which I'm not a spoiler. I'm sure you can anticipate that Godzilla is going to wreak some havoc. It was an awesome sequence. It's a really cool sequence. They did a really great job. One of my major criticism of Godzilla, this Godzilla, but I guess maybe all Godzillas kind of, is that, man, Godzilla is a sneaky guy. Like, people do not notice Godzilla, this giant, massive kaiju creature, until he's like right behind you. Like, people don't know Godzilla's there until he like walks up and taps you on the shoulder. Because you're watching, like, in the background, you're watching people in like a market, and then you see like the giant foot drop, like, you know, 100 yards away or whatever. And you're like, nobody's really reacting to it in the way you would, because the fucking ground would be shaking. Every step would be there'd be a crater. But other than that, I can let that go. I can let it go. Yeah, they did some really great work with that. The performances across the board, you know, I know it's in a different language, so it is what it is, but I bought it. You just buy into the drama. Like, it really gets its hooks in you. And especially if you know a little bit about that part of history and what happened in Japan towards the end of World War II and post-war. It's so tragic, it's so sad, and they do a really great job of kind of representing that, like what people had to deal with, live with. Just some really tragic circumstances, and all the characters kind of embody different aspects of that, you know. I'm also kind of a sucker for it, because I remember, if you've ever seen it, Grave of the Fireflies, the Studio Ghibli movie, or Ghibli, I don't know how the fuck you say it. I say Ghibli, and I just go back and forth. Grave of the Fireflies, it kind of reminded me a little bit of that, like anything to do with children, and not necessarily like in peril or anything, just children in general. Although these children are definitely in peril, this child rather, but in danger in a lot of different ways. And it got me, man. It really got me. I was so like, there's something that happens at the end of the movie that could be considered like really kind of contrived or cheesy, and I just didn't care. they built up to it in a way that it was so satisfying. It's like they earned that saccharine earnestness, that sincerity. Like they earned it. They earned that moment, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment in the movie. And seriously, single tear just going down my face. Oh, dude, the last act is so good. Like just the build up to what happens and what they are doing with Godzilla and how they figure it out. Like it's so good because it's not only interesting in kind of a kinetic, visceral way in terms of like, you know, what you're about to watch and how they're going to do the plan and how they're going to get Godzilla to a particular place, but also emotionally. Like it's emotionally really intense, everything that's going on, because it does such a great job with the first two acts, like just setting up the characters in the world and like kind of their ground zero. And then chapter 2 is kind of, or not chapter 2, I'm sorry, act 2 is kind of observing where they are right now, kind of they're resigned to some of this stuff just being part of their lives. And then once you get into act 3, it's kind of like, you know, we're at the top, we're at a very low point for all the characters, and the entire third act is like basically just pulling yourself up out of the darkness, you know, or Japan collectively is just pulling itself out of the darkness and to live once again, to live. It was, I'm telling you, man, if you get a chance to go see Godzilla -1, please do. Not only because you should support an actual good fucking movie in the movie theater, but fucking, I don't know, what is the deal with like the American side of all this stuff? It's such a simple movie. It's really intelligently designed too, because it's a kind of a small movie. Like they really effectively chose where they spent their money, and there's some big shit in this movie. But they really effectively chose how they spent their money, because most of it like is a small, intimate family drama. Or kind of a social commentary family drama. And it's really effective. It just really works. You just like all the characters. It is by far the best human story of a Godzilla movie. It's like I said before, these movies are a little bit in a genre of their own. They don't really kind of follow traditional rules. Most of the time, the human stories are awful and they're stupid. They're like filler. They're filler to get to the action. And this movie, even if Godzilla wasn't in this movie, it wouldn't matter. This could have been anything. It could have been something more realistic, and it would have been just as effective. It would have been just as effective. It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece Godzilla movie. God damn. We did it, guys. We got a Godzilla movie that's good. Hell yeah. Anyways, go see Godzilla. I'm home, so I'm going to go inside. But go see Godzilla. Now, go. I can't wait to watch it with my son. Go!